I'm always on the lookout for old test gear. I don't care whether it's broken or whether it's just used and needs refurbishing. But today I picked up an entire car full of it, £180, and and about 140 mile round trip was all it took. It took about 45 minutes to load up this car with all of the surplus stuff in a office in Chesterfield, and we're going to take a look at what I got. Picking up a few pieces of electronics information. So this here is a spectrum analyzer. Let's see what else we might have here. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So you know what? I'm not even sure what these are. There's something from Marconi. Here, there's another one here. It's a 2-unit part system that plugs together. Even down here in the footwells, we have got components. We've got huge, I mean these look like huge capacitors, to be honest. We've got power supplies, manuals. There's some test gear back here. Can't really tell what that is. If we just go around here a little bit further, yeah, cables, parts, capacitors, transformers, and down buried in the bottom of this are even more pieces of test gear. At the back there, more test gear. Open the boot. A scope over here. There's another scope under here. This one here looks like to be some sort of scope. It's got a Z-axis input and a channel 1 signal out, so I'm going to go for scope number 3. Down here we've got a binocular microscope. GS is the brand apparently on that. That's just a box full of cables of all sorts. I can see coax and network and stuff in there. Looking further back, more cables, some high voltage stuff in here, more test gear, microscope parts, more test gear here. Going around to the left hand door. So I'm going to go for that being yet another scope, would be my expectation. What have we got underneath that? Yeah, a complete another box. I think that box has got about 6 or 7 pieces of test gear in it. I think this one here is a programmable signal generator. Down here we've got a high tension transformer unit, I believe. You can kind of see the transformer hidden away in the back there, I hope. And yeah, down here there's an AVO there, that's a Mark 6. AVO 8 Mark 6, there's another piece of test gear under it, another piece of test gear behind it, and it goes on and on and on. So I'm going to be unloading this in a few minutes time. I'm just trying to make some space in the lab. Okay, so I've got most of the stuff moved in out of the car now, and I've thrown all the worst of it, the absolute junk. So we've got a lot of keyboards and mice and cables, power cables, that sort of stuff. Just dump those out of the way. Let's have a look at what we've got on this side then. So these are various miscellaneous boxes, video camera, some projects that the guy was working on, a few little things. These will be like 10-minute teardowns, I think. Whatever spy mission is. There's something here as well called InfoRad. I don't really know what that is. It's got an aerial attached to it, USB on the other side. So it reminds me of one of those sat-nav type things. So yeah, maybe something along those lines. A few boards. This is a Teamer A100. If I remember rightly, is that a sat-nav chip? Can't be sure, can't remember. Who knows? Various bits and pieces, a grungy soldering iron. A couple of bits of weird lab equipment. So this is actually a dehydration tube, so or moisture trap. So you push air or whatever gas it is that you're working with through one end, and it comes out the other end dry. Yeah, handy. Some freezer spray, that's useful. I did spray that earlier and nearly froze my finger because the cap isn't working. Just need a replacement cap on that. So let's have a look at this big guy back here. So this is a power supply. This is a 6 kilovolt power supply, so high voltage supply. I don't know if it works. I'm guessing it probably does. There's not much to go wrong in there, and it is made by Foster Transformers in London, SW19. There you go, Morden Road, London, SW19. I've been to Morden Road, in fact. I don't think they're there anymore. The two capacitors. You know, if you've got a big transformer, you need a big capacitor. So this is a Reef ether long life, 400 volt, 3300 microfarad, and you know, it's big. A couple of other large capacitors there as well. A couple of transformers. I think these might be out of microwaves or something along those lines. They look about the type. But yeah. Up here we've got another high voltage transformer. This is a 505 kilovolt. So that's pretty high. And up here we've got another couple of transformers. They've got loads and loads of taps on these, dozens of taps. A couple of capacitors. They seem to be written in Russian though, so I'm not quite sure what they are. Here we've got HP compact. So nothing special to write home about. Whether it fires up, I don't know. It's got a hard disk in it, I noticed. And beyond that, and then we get onto the real test equipment. Now, so this is just what I haven't been able to fit into my electronics lab. We've got a Anritsu. Let's see if we can zoom in on that. There we go, Anritsu spectrum analyzer, 50 Hz to 2 gigahertz. Now, in some ways, I might quite like to get that going because I'd actually like to do some low-end spectrum analysis at sort of 1 kilohertz and things like that, and that might be quite useful if this fires up. The only problem with this is I had to have help lifting it. It is so heavy, unbelievably heavy. Down here we've got a few bits and pieces. So on the left hand side here, this is just a box full of components. A lot of SCR, some chips, yeah, prototyping boards, all sorts of things. Power packs. This one here is full of various cables. I've sorted through these vaguely. So there's lots of BNC cables and USB and network cables, that sort of stuff. In here, there's just a bit of cable on the side. Let's get that out of the way. We've got some electric motors. They might actually be quite useful, particularly huge ones at the bottom, because I might need a couple of those in the workshop, one to replace on a lathe, and one for another piece of work that I'm thinking of doing. But they do look like they've actually got gearboxes on them, so I have to find out what's going on there. Yeah, so that's about it out here. So that's the stuff I couldn't fit into my electronics lab. So yeah, back in the normal lab. So this is my workbench, something I'm working on at the moment. Forget about all of that. And that is pretty much the rest of the stuff that I picked up today. So yeah, not a bad haul really. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 pieces of electronic test gear. Up here we've got a big microscope. This looks pretty accomplished. It's got all the quartz lamp. It's got all the irises on here. There's an iris built in there as well. There's a bunch of whole bunch of focusing stuff under here. Got an XY table, very smooth. Got a whole bunch of objectives here, and of course the binocular vision up at the top here. Let's take a look across. It's just a laser printer, no idea if it works. It's got a Centronics interface, not sure what else. Now let's move down from that to another spectrum analyzer. So this is a spectrum analyzer that a few years back I was really hoping to be able to get hold of one, but they always went for amounts far more than I was willing to pay. Now, how much have I paid for all of this? I paid £180 for the whole lot. Let's call that $200 US. So that's all the stuff that was out in the other lab that you just saw. The high voltage supply, the computer and the spectrum analyzer, and all of the pieces that are in here, including this of course, and the microscope. So yeah, so this looks in pretty good nick. I've no idea how well it works or not. One piece of good news with it is that often when you see them, they don't have the interconnect cables on the back, or you'll only see half of it. So this is both parts of the spectrum analyzer. So this is the display unit, this is the actual analyzer unit. And yeah, and it has all the specialist interconnect cables on the back. So that's excellent news. Let's move over to this pile here. I'll start at the bottom. So we've got a Gould advanced scope. I'm not sure what speed that is. I think it might be 20 megahertz. It could just be 10, but I think it's 20 because of the time base. Is that a dual time base? It might be. Be interesting if it is. I might actually keep it if it is. Moving up, we've got another Gould Advance, which is not quite the same model, and this is because this one is a digital storage scope. I suspect it's the same time base and everything. And it says limited store, and then refresh on roll only. So I don't know how interesting that is. Interesting here for some people. This is a let me come over here. NATO stock number Z46625 blah blah blah. Here we've got a Farnell scope, 20 megahertz DVT20, pretty bog standard. So yeah, but okay if it works. Who knows if it works? And you know, be a good project if it doesn't. Moving up, we have yet another oscilloscope. You can never have too many oscilloscopes. So this is a Grunded Electric Oscilloscope MO100. So I'm guessing it's 100 megahertz. It might not be. Maybe it's only 10. But it's difficult to tell on this one, of course, because all the time base and the display are in these digital readouts up here. So quite a nice scope actually. Quite like the layout, and yeah, makes it quite neat. Moving up, we've got a so this is a, what's the word I'm looking for? Antenna tuner. So we can read reflection and forward power in watts there. So that's quite nice. And then we've got an SWR power meter up here for the radio aficionados. Moving across, we've got an Avometer 8 Mark 6. So sadly, there is damage to the mirror on the scale. I don't know if the mirror can be replaced independent of the rest of the scale or not. Hopefully it can. And there's one little button that's missing its cap on this side. But yeah, not too worried about that. Looks in very good nick. And even if I sold it second hand like this, then that'd be worthwhile. Cross onto this pile here, we've got a Black Star frequency counter, 600 megahertz. I suspect that may well be working. There's not a lot to go wrong in there. If it's not going to be too hard a job to fix. Moving now, we've got a Victor. I'm just going to call it a frequency generator, I think. They call it something posh. There is an instruction manual for it. That's always nice. Haven't read the details. So it's a Victor VC 2003. Okay. Let's keep moving down. Here we have a WaveTech 5 megahertz sweep generator. So very much more in the analog world with this guy. So again, you know, this should be repairable. The question is, how do they get these waveforms? Keep going down. What have we got now? We've got a Ray Caldana UHF frequency counter. This is only going to be what, 500-600 megahertz, something like that. Yeah, 500 megahertz. And because we haven't seen enough scopes yet, here's a Nicolette storage scope. I can't see anything that's helping me understand the frequency. I think the time base only goes down to 1 microsecond, so it's not going to be a very stunning time base on that. Then finally we get quite a SMIC piece of equipment. So this is Enertech Slumberger 4431 20 meg programmable function generator. So yeah, so that looks quite pleasant. Again, you know, how well it works or not, we wait to see. Oh, and I missed one. So yeah, so over here, this guy, this stuff used to belong to, obviously like the high voltage stuff, because this is a kilovolt meter and it reads up to 30 kilovolts. So yeah, I have actually been on the lookout for something that can read high voltages, and I do have a high voltage probe actually, which obviously that's just a big divider probe, so you can use it with a normal meter. But yeah, so that's quite interesting, and that also has a big divider circuit in it, and it outputs to a normal voltmeter as well. So I suspect it's like a divide by 30, divide by 1,000 circuit, something along those lines. So yeah, so overall I am pretty happy with today's efforts. It was certainly an effort getting all of this stuff out of the old lab where it was all stored, put away in the car, and then removed out at this end. And yeah, one or two of them I really needed help moving. So yeah, but anyway, so if you've got any sort of thoughts as to what I should start refurbishing, tearing down and repairing first, then yeah, just leave some preferences please in the comments below. I'm going to leave though the big spectrum analyzer, that Anritsu spectrum analyzer, till later on. I think really I'm going to kind of have to gird myself to attack that one, not least because I won't be able to move around my bench much because it just weighs too much. It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, okay, so anything else? Oh yeah, okay, well, a few probes, scope probes. There's actually a pair of Tektronix miniature 150 megahertz scope probes in that, which is quite good news. And yeah, a bunch of manuals and things like that for some of this test gear, which is also very helpful. Always grab the manuals if they're lying around. So anyway, hopefully that was of some interest. No teardowns or anything today, but yeah, as I say, if you've got some preference as to what you might think, you know, do you want to have a look at a bit of an older WaveTech type stuff? Do you want to just see how this microscope works or not works, as the case may be? So, you know, what tickles your fancy for some of my future videos. So anyway, if you enjoyed that, please give it a little thumbs up, and comments down below, of course, and if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe please. And I'll see you next time. Take care.